like I lean towards what most people like, Stephen Milo and Nathan and Gregory Little even kind of leans towards the basic mainstream that the Mississippian builders basically emerged from Poverty Point Mound, and that's around 1,600, 1,700 BC. And so I tend to follow these guys on that because they're the ones looking up the research papers, and I'm not really versed in that. My expertise was actually more political philosophy and some basic anthropology classes I was required to take. So that's where like I learned about Graham Hancock, and at the University of Iowa in the building on the upper left at McBride Hall is when my professor introduced it in the auditorium about Graham Hancock claiming certain things about the Mississippian mound builders and civilizations, and the audience basically laughed. But I
Hmm.
can see understandably why now, because I feel like Graham is just not addressing certain basic logical conclusions on the evidence that they have found. And for example, at Poverty Point Mound, we have found that there is copper there, but there's no iron, there's no steel, there's no smelting of copper, but there is softening of copper. So they've never learned to actually smelt copper at above 1,000 degrees to make it nice and perfect and smooth. But they can soften it when heated to 600 degrees. So it's little details like that can tell
Hmm.
us that the civilization is not as advanced as we would make it out to be relative to Egypt, Persia, the Hittites, and the Romans. So we have to just acknowledge that when you want to say there's advanced civilization, well, what does Graham mean by that? Because if they didn't learn how to smelt copper and have abundance amounts of copper, now copper was a big thing. They did trade it, but since there's so much copper in Michigan and the Upper Peninsula, and they traded down the Mississippi, they didn't really learn to fully smelt it.
Hmm.
So that tells us that their advancement was behind, and that's why we call it the New World, because they're traveling, across the Pacific Ocean or through the Bering Strait, and they're just behind because it's taking longer to get over to North and South America. And once they get over there, they may have been there for 30,000 years, but their population was so small, and the Ice Age is restricting them that they won't have time. They won't be able to speed up civilization as quick as the old world. And that's what we
Hmm.
call it, the older world. So the older stuff, if you want to find Atlantis, Graham is correct to say that it has to be near the equator zone. And that's correct. I definitely would agree with that. So, but there are older mounds like at Watson Break. But Graham might mention that Watson Break's so old, but there's there's controversy about what they're dating. They're just dating some carbon layer of burning. And clearly, some kind of cremation is happening there with bones and ash and plants, specifically some certain kind of fibrous plants in swamps. And
Hmm.
but that's below the base of the mound here you see at LSU. So they're not sure if that's related to the architectural structure of the mound itself, or is that a precursor civilization, or not civilization, but hunter gatherers, and then they just coincidentally built on top of that.
Right.
Like there's a jump between Watson Break at 3,500 BC and some of the carbon they've dated at LSU at 9,000 BC. So they're thinking that there's a big gap there. So more than likely they're just dating something that's kind of random from some hunter gatherer just happened to do a big burn pile right where there was a mound that was going to build on top later. But
Hmm.
most of the mound builders, they basically started in Louisiana, as Dr. Littles like argues a lot.
What do you think?
Oh yeah, I think they definitely. It makes sense they would start in Louisiana because in the Ice Age, you go past up into Missouri. That area at the time would have felt like Minnesota. So the climate was a
Okay.
lot cooler. The growing season was shorter, so it wasn't as conducive to establishing a civilization. So they were condensed near the Mississippi. More than likely, the hypothesis is that the question is, did they travel along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico and then landed in Louisiana and eventually talked to some natives there and eventually got onto the river because they probably had boats. And I bet the older civilization, if we're going to find an older civilization, it's going to be like what Graham said, near the equator zone. So in Mesoamerica. And that's where we have the Olmecs down there that are dating at least 1,600 BC. But when it comes to Poverty Point, there's a question, like, is that a civilization? because they're saying we don't find evidence of agriculture like maize, because most of the archaeologists are digging up stuff on, for example, let me show that slide. Where was it? So you see the river here on the left-hand side. That's like 20 feet lower. It doesn't look like it, but it's like 20 feet lower. The crops over here, and that's the alluvial plain. But most of the archaeological digs are only allowed on the left side of that river because this is farmland owned by private industry, private farmer, private land. So there is a question. They're saying, well, they were hunter gatherers. Well, that is still up for debate. So Graham might be right that like Poverty Point might be more advanced in the sense they may have actually had maize, but if it's in the alluvial plain and they have flooding there every couple hundred years of like 25 to 50 feet high. That's like in 1929, they had a massive flood in the Mississippi, and this alluvial plain was underwater, but not at the plaza here at Poverty Point. But up to this river, all of this was under 10 to 20 feet of water. So that could over time rot most of the evidence of maize that was traded in from Mesoamerica, potentially, because we know the oldest dates of maize is like 7,000 BC of cultivation, but it's like a long-term process of cultivation. It started as a small grass, and then it grew into something bigger as they selected it. But there's a chance that Graham could be right that it may have been an agricultural civilization. So I wouldn't rule that out. An archaeologist shouldn't rule that out either. It's just they gotta dig more. And the problem is, there is a lot of land rights, ownerships, and all that you gotta deal with. So it's a slow process. I'm sorry, Rebirth. I can't hear you.
My bad. I'm so you said that's a river running through there, right? How?
That's the very edge of the alluvial plain. So yeah, so that's meant to be flooded. So it's interesting because the people of Poverty Point clearly knew that alluvial plain was actually a flood zone. So that's probably where they would have tried to grow maize if there really was some trade of maize seeds up from Mesoamerica. It probably would have landed. I mean, they probably would have done it on the east side of that tributary stream. And the problem is, it's been cultivated with modern day maize, and excavated. Like,
So this goes back to because so you consider the Mississippian civilization to start when the mounds were starting to be built, or
I would say, yeah, Watson Break.
Okay.
I don't think we can categorize that as a civilization. No, but their design is definitely connected with Poverty Point because theirs is a circular, smaller mounds in a circle with a plaza in the center, and the plaza is probably maybe their gathering space, ritual space, or market space. And then the top and the circle where the mounds are, like they're maybe like 10 to 20 feet. That's where the elites would have their huts there. Same thing with here. But they claim that at Poverty Point that they haven't found evidence of hierarchy. When I look at the design of this, though, I can clearly see some kind of hierarchy. So each arch or ring is probably a certain type of people would be living in little huts on top of those arched mounds, which are about originally they would have been like maybe 10 feet to 15 feet high, and now they're down to 6 feet.
Okay.
And the same thing with now, it was taller. It's 72 feet now. I've been there before, but it probably originally was 90 feet because I think the design was intended to be at the tree height level, the canopy of the trees, so they can be above the trees or right at the trees. But over time, you can clearly see that erosion, and it rains a lot in Louisiana, so it probably has slumped down by 10 or 20 feet.
Okay, that's interesting. And is that the only the one in that area, or is there multiple ones around that area?
No, this is the main largest site at
Like no smaller ones or anything?
BC. There's smaller sites. Yeah, I mean, there's other mounds around here that are around the same date, but there's other sites that are older, like in LSU, but it's just it's one or two mounds, and we don't know. That was more of a little village settlement, maybe around the mound. Whereas here there seems to be a clear hierarchy design of the site and a master plan and awareness that this alluvial plain is actually a floodplain. And they were somehow aware of that because they probably traversed the Mississippi because Let me go to the other side. But because this Mississippi is basically like the Mississippi Valley is basically their Garden of Eden. They would have
Right.
done
Yep.
agriculture in the valley, not in the woodlands where there's too many trees to knock down. They would have burned the forest in the valley area and would have made canals in certain areas around west of closer to St. Louis, west of Cahokia, and along inside that valley. This is not far where I live, actually. This is about 10 miles south of me in St. Louis, or well, it's actually in the Illinois side, looking towards the Mississippi. But this valley is very defined, and Native Americans would have seen this space and say, "This has to be a geopolitical space. We need to control this space because it's flat, and it's an agricultural space that they can use now, especially after the year 1000 BC."
Dang. That's crazy. And I say that because you say that's 10 miles from where you stay at. So you live that close to it?
My condo is literally about 3 miles away from the Mississippi. So there's a nice park that looks over the Mississippi. There's an ancient Native American trail in southern St. Louis that's been there for thousands of years. Now it's a hiking trail and it's sort of been maintained. I'm sure the Native Americans probably had they would have kept the main trails on the cliff sides, following the river, so they could view the river and see who's transversing it on their canoes or barges. They may have had barges potentially, in the sense they put multiple canoes together and then boards on top and interlock that. They might have used copper nails or something like that. But this is this is south of St. Louis a little bit.
And it said the flood range is 20 to 50 feet. So it's 20 to 50 feet. What?
If there was a massive flood event, looking at this valley, this whole valley would be completely underwater for about 20 feet high to 50 feet at the most. So imagine that back, especially in the Ice Age, most of this was carved after the melting of the Younger Dryas in the Ice Age. A lot of this was carved out because of the massive water that was coming off those ice sheets during the melting periods of the early Holocene. So that's why that's why we say to Graham, there wouldn't be a lost civilization in the Ice Age, because all of this would have been underwater. This valley, the lush, fertile valley, would be underwater for about a couple hundred years, or 1,000 years, as the melting is happening. So the woodlands would have been free of water, obviously, but there have been too many trees, and it's hard to control that terrain because it's hillier. So geopolitically, it's not as conducive to developing a civilization. That's why Egypt is on the Nile Valley, which is its Garden of Eden.
Yeah, it's Garden of Eden. Yeah. Anything you want to say, Phil, real quick?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, they're gonna want to keep main control of the flats and all the valleys. They're gonna want to keep the high points, that's just a natural thing. Especially if you're gonna try and control a territory, you're gonna want to control all the flats and valleys. That way, you're gonna see, like Enigma said, you're gonna want to see how people are traveling in and out of your territory.
Yeah, and the population, most of the Native Americans, were living in Louisiana during the Ice Age. That's why there's so many older mounds in Louisiana. That's because they just inherited that space, and they've been staying in that space because they didn't want to go north because it snows up there, and the human body can handle heat better than it can cold weather. Like 20-degree weather and naked, you're gonna die. But 100-degree weather, you can get some shade, you can go in the water. Just like in Egypt, you can survive in 100-degree weather because the human body we came from Africa originally, so we can withstand that easier. And this region of Louisiana would have been more hospitable, as it wouldn't be as humid during the Ice Age. So that's why this is the beginning of where the mound builder civilization started.
Yeah, I'm trying to find something, man. I have this one thing, man. I have to find it on my computer.
I'll be right back, gentlemen.
Yeah, go ahead, bro. Oh, man, somebody gave me a while ago a website for all the indigenous places in the U.S., but I don't know if it was on I think it's under my Google account. So I probably have to log onto my Google account and check the bookmarks under there. Because it had a lot of stuff on there that like all the like maps of all the indigenous land and who was in control of what and what time frame and all that other stuff. But you know,
Yeah, those categorizations of like the name Adena, we don't know the original name of that culture because we don't have any evidence of their writing. And is it possible they had writing? I think it's possible, but if there's any evidence, it would probably be in Louisiana. Problem is, if they're writing on birch bark, you know, it's not going to survive.
yep,
So that's why we are going by their artifacts mostly. But
I
there's
found it.
evidence of trading. That's for sure.
I found it. I had to use. I have it on my laptop instead.
Yeah,
I'm
you
about
can
to
share
bring
that
it.
if you want.
Yeah, I'm
Do I
about to
need to
share
stop
it.
sharing?
No, no, no. You can keep it up.
Oh, okay.
I can bring it up and down. I want to show you because this is maybe you know about this or not. Because this is a lot of help. So this
Oh
right
yeah,
here,
yeah, I know that site.
you know about
That's
this
amazing.
website, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Someone put that all together. That was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Again, if you really look at that, you see how there's like everything's like a bubble. In
Yeah.
reality, it'd be more like a spider web because they would have had mostly control over the rivers, not a whole large swath of forest for hundreds of miles. They would have
So
stayed near the tributary. So it's a general blob to say here's the general area.
what the hell is this? Oh, the ads.
Oh.
Oh, I want to. Oh man, I wanted to try to type in the address. Like it has the treaties and stuff like that. Like I don't know nothing about that.
Oh, are these modern Native American tribes in the past 200 years?
I don't know to be honest with you. I mean, they got the languages here.
Hmm.
Oh, that's not even close
Oh,
to
it's the
us.
whole world.
Yeah,
It's
it's the whole world.
averages.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. The whole world, not just the U.S. Like
Oh,
it has the indigenous people everywhere. Like South America, none in here,
huh.
of course. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, man. Like I don't know why it's
Can you zoom in to Louisiana or?
yeah, I'm about to try it again. I'll see it's only giving me half of what I want to see. Let me see. Because it had a spot up here where you can zoom in the city,
Hmm.
Missouri. Where are you close by?
St. Louis.
St. Louis.
I don't know if
So
it's
where
labeled
St.
on
Louis would
there.
be? Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
on
you're
here.
near it. Keep zooming in. Yeah, a little
I don't
farther
see
north.
it. I don't see it.
It's a little blurry on my end.
Hold
It's
on, I'm
right in
trying to.
that blue and brown.
I'm half
Or is that
colorblind, bro.
Peoria? Oh, I see it. Right at that
Yeah, I
blob.
see Peoria, but I don't
Right
see St. Louis.
south of that, and that red where you were just holding it right there. Yeah,
Right here?
it's in that zone. Yeah. Now go
Oh, and
north.
this zone right here.
Yeah.
Let's
Can you
see.
zoom in? Yes.
It's near Arkansas.
And yeah, go up a little bit. There we go. At the edge of that red blob or purple pink blob. Oh man, it's so hard to see on my end. Yeah.
Hold on, let's see something. Because
Oh,
we
that's
make it
close.
bigger.
You should
Yeah,
put
I
a more
can't.
opacity on there.
I don't. It had a thing on there because I
Oh, there
see
you go. St.
Owensboro.
Louis. Oh wait,
Where? See, I
I'm
can't.
having
I
trouble
see
seeing. Yeah,
Evansville,
it's upper left. Now go
up
up,
at
right,
Jefferson City,
right there,
right here somewhere.
right there, in that reddish pink. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no St. Louis on here.
Oh, those blobs are covering it up, but it's right there. They should put more of an opacity on
Let's
those.
see.
Give me more
So,
control.
but I don't. Yeah, it doesn't because Clarksville is right here. That's
Yeah, north of
Tennessee.
that.
Yeah, and you got Cahokia.
At the end of the pink protrusion. Yeah, right. A little
About
up.
right.
to the left.
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's not
It's like right there in the upper blob.
yeah,
It's in the heart of America. At one time, they were thinking about
I'm shocked it doesn't say it on here though.
it.
But
It
I don't.
does, but it's just hard to see.
Oh,
At one time,
I'm
they're
ha-
thinking about St. Louis being the capital of America, but DC wanted out.
yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that, man. This is like a good map for all that
Yeah, I
stuff,
should look
bro.
at that more often. Huh.
I don't know why it's not showing me
Oop, I see a black sky. There we go.
the oh shoot, wrong one. Oh, screen share. Why is it not screen sharing? Hold on.
See,
There we go.
Yeah,
There
go
we
to the
go.
next slide. Let me switch to another slide.
Yeah, that's strange, man. I'm shocked that
I've been to these two mountains. Oh no, I have not been to Pinson Mound, but Godsauce, you've been here, right? Saul Mound or Pinson Mound in Tennessee
that's where I was supposed to go for.
on the
Tennessee.
left hand.
I haven't been to many Tennessee mounds actually.
Oh,
I've been to
okay. I
all
thought
the
you said so.
Mississippi mounds.
This is an Arkansas mound on the right. That's Toltec mound site, and there's two main mounds there. That's in central, not far from Little Rock. I think like east of that.
That's pretty cool. You know why? Because I was supposed to go to Pinson with Mike and Dave, but we had to put our trip on hold. I think one of them, I think Dave got sick or something like the day before we were supposed to go. Because you know about that because we were supposed to meet you up there. We was going to go to Pinson. We was going to go to Serpent Mound. Shit, I might make a trip to Serpent Mound soon. To be honest with you, just drive up there. It's not that far. I think it's like 8 hours from me.
And if you go to Cahokia, I'll probably stop by and meet at the mound.
But it's cool that it's all by water, though. I told you every civilization is going to be by body of water.
Yeah, because they developed boats pretty early on. The Solutrean hypothesis says that some, I don't know, proto or pre-Celtic culture, I wouldn't call it civilization, with this type of arrowheads they have, they found a few in the northeast of the U.S., and they may have just landed once and got stranded, and then they died there. But they had boats going back. That was like, I think, 15,000 years ago. The Solutrean hypothesis.
15,000?
Yeah, is dated for the hypothesis that people from France basically followed the ice sheet on the south of Ireland, and then crossed over to New England.
Mm-hmm.
But it might have been like a one-way trip.
Oh, so well, for the most part,
they probably killed off by Native Americans.
For the most part, to be honest with you, that's probably what happened was that it was just a one-way trip, and it was like that for a lot of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, until Christopher Columbus and the Chinese it was really the Chinese and the Muslims that really invented the first large kind of like boats that could transverse across Africa, south towards what's that site in Africa? The famous kingdom, Timbuktu, that region of West Africa. And the Chinese treasure boats, they call them by.
I believe it's Wakanda.
But it was believed, man, if the Chinese did not burn down their large treasure boats, man, they could have conquered all of Africa. But they decided to turn back, and that was a big mistake, I think, on their part. But they probably went possibly all the way to Ethiopia, possibly South Africa, and they did go up to Egypt. But that was in the 12th century. So that was before European exploration, and then once Christopher Columbus came, he just happened to be perfect for the Europeans because they're on that peninsula of Europe, and they're just following the trade winds, and they just ended up in the Caribbean. So that's why Christopher Columbus, his first islands he named were the Antilles. I think it's a Portuguese or Spanish for Atlantis. Now he didn't really believe that was Atlantis, but to their perspective, like, hey, we just found a lost world, and they didn't realize that Atlantis is really just associated to Egypt the whole time because there's so many translations that were just getting confused by back in those days. So naturally, I would definitely not call North America. I used to believe that North and South America could be Atlantis, but that was kind of Ignatius Donnelly pushing that. In reality, I mean, yeah, you could argue North and South America was definitely a lost world to the
Right.
Europeans' perspective. But then again, Native Americans be like, well, we're the ones that discovered you. You landed on our shores, we discovered you.
So
But,
let me ask you something, man. So from your understanding, so the mounds is what you believe makes the Mississippian civilization, but what do you think really changed, or I'm not going to say changed, what do you think really separates them from the other people that was there before?
Well, the fact that they could build like this site here at Toltec, it was a fortification. So it was basically a town that was walled in by plaster wood walls, and they had some central control. They had some religious kind of origin, probably coming from Central America, and they controlled the trade with large canoes, like very large canoes, not your typical canoes, and they would actually ship soil on those canoes. So there's a lot of organization and governmental control, you could call it, or proto government. So that's why we would categorize it as a civilization, because there was order. It's not just a bunch of family groups. It's a little bit beyond just one family group of, second cousins removed family. It's more like a dynastic connection now. But they actually, most scholars don't really totally agree though. Like Stephen Milo, he wouldn't say, I'm not sure if we would totally call it a dynastic lineage, because the problem is we don't have their writing. So because they kept it probably on birch bark or something that was biodegradable. If they had any form of writing, it probably would have had some kind of connection with Mesoamerica, but that writing was probably after 1600 BC. And that's why I put like that date is so important, because it's so unusual that 1600 BC, if I go back to, let's see. Yeah.
Is there
If
no
I go back to,
artifact from that time that has like tin or copper embossed plating? Because Dr. Dre
yeah, I
shows a
think
lot of that stuff. Like, why wouldn't they have left behind some kind of Rosetta Stone for us,
well, the copper that they had, it's not showing evidence that they were smelting it at very high temperatures. So they didn't quite master that. And it was very mostly used for jewelry. They would actually clade like their earring spokes. They would just clade that in copper and try to make it look like solid metal, but it wasn't, because they had limited copper. Most of the copper was being hopped from village to village down the Mississippi, from Michigan all the way down to Poverty Point. But it was more of a long-term travel. It wasn't like someone from Poverty Point went all the way up to Michigan at the Upper Peninsula at the Horn, and then came all the way back down. No, more likely it's just each tribal city state is just transferring it or trading it, like kind of like money, and then eventually got down to Poverty Point. But there was a sphere of influence Poverty Point had, because there's definitely some evidence to show that the trade was mostly going towards Poverty Point, but it wasn't going out, according to Stephen Milo and others. There are like the channel Ancient America. He kind of explains this as well. So there seems to be definitely some central importance for Poverty Point for trade coming in, but not necessarily going out, which is interesting. But that's a hypothesis.
Hey, so
Oh,
I want to. Oh my bad.
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
Oh,
so
I just
you
wanted to emphasize. Sorry.
you was talking about knots, man, or writing systems, and I went and got the book real quick, because I was telling you I was reading the. I just got done reading the Codex, this one right here, and what I started to, I guess what I started realizing or learning is that when you look at the pictographic script inside, hold on, let me make this bigger for you guys. So when you look at the pictographic script, you see those little 1-2 dot circles that's by each one of those things. Yeah. So and this just dawned on me actually just a few seconds ago. Nodding used to be a thing back then and nobody knows what kind of what type of communication it was instilled in it. Right? Like some people, like if you look on the cover of it, you can see the little dots already on the top right here, right? And But when you look at the pictographic scripts, each one has, if it's on there, has a different set of amount on there, and they're color coded, right?
Number-based system. I thought it was based off numbering.
Yeah, but mathematics and is the first language, right? It's the first one true language, right? But how did they take that and put that into their own type of language for their stories? Because like this says right here, like a lot of this stuff has to do with like the years and the months and the days and how many gods or whatnot and stuff like that. So it's just interesting that you brought up what kind, if they had the same type of writing system as the Mesoamericans, then you would probably be able to find that in their art too.
Yeah. So far, the hype theory is that the leading theory is that they did not have writing, but I would not rule that out right away. I would say that if there is trading coming from southern Louisiana, which there is evidence of, then are they also trading some? The question is, where did some of that copper come from? Because there's copper in Mesoamerica and there's copper coming from Michigan. And the current theory is most of that copper they hypothesize based off, I guess, the isotope ratios in the copper, that most of it's coming from Michigan. But there's a chance that some of it might be coming from Mesoamerica, but they haven't found enough to make that theory. But I wouldn't rule that out because it's not that much of a stretch to say they would have followed the coastline. And as they're encountering some villages, those villages say, "Hey, go over to here. There's a big dragon snake river over here called the Mississippi, whatever." And eventually they just follow the Mississippi up, which is interesting because how could they go upstream with small boats? So they must have had larger boats with long poles with multiple people, dozens of people being able to row up that and possibly having some kind of sail made out of leather or bark or something to get some kind of momentum to get upstream. Because clearly they're getting upstream to Poverty Point. But most archaeologists are hypothesizing, oh, and actually it's just a bunch of people that have already been living there and they're building the mound. Sure, I would say it's unusual. I think Luke Caverns also might have mentioned this. It's unusual that all these civilizations in the mainstream archaeological record seem to pop up right around 3,500 BC to 4,000 BC, Norde Chinko. But then at around 1,600 BC, there's some reshuffling happening. The Shang dynasty starts popping up. Norde Chinko collapses, but Poverty Point pops up. And then, of course, we have the Bronze Age collapse after that, or supposedly the Bronze Age collapse might have to be shifted back to 1,600 BC. So some massive event, and I think Santorini is probably that catalyst, a VEI 7, potentially a volcanic eruption, and that could have ramifications over the whole planet on affecting, rain events and dry periods, and that's starting to shuffle people around. And the leaders are saying, hey, we need to start consolidating and work together. And it seems like there's something going on around that date. And Poverty Point just happens to be around that time when they pop up. And then from there, the mound builders really expand. But they do exist prior to that in Louisiana, but they're just, any tribe around the world could take a bunch of dirt and make a few small mounds and put your bodies in there. That doesn't mean they're sophisticated civilization that's a dynasty. But at Poverty Point, it looks like the architecture here is definitely showing some real design sophistication. And so far we haven't found maize, but I think there's a chance they're going to find it if they have access to the fields to the right of that river.
So let me make this clear. So copper has a lot to do with also calling them a certain civilization in your perspective.
I would say once they start learning how to master smelting metal, yeah, because eventually those, you end up to some natural design of warfare where you're going to need some kind of weapon like a sword. And so far, we've never found any swords in North America, which is why I would say to Graham that, yeah, there's not, you find a sword, that's proof you have some advanced civilization that's taking over that region. Because if the other civilization doesn't have a sword, or even a more advanced bow, or the crossbow, being able to fire a crossbow or something, it all comes down to population size and the productivity of that civilization. Because Poverty Point's population is estimated to be 1,000 to 2,000 people. So it's not a city like in Uruk, in Iraq, which had I
Yeah.
think they had 30,000 people at like 4,000 BC. So I think it's clear that the ancient, really old sites are going to be in the Middle East,
Right,
and
right,
that's where
right.
Atlantis is going to be. And here, they're just behind like about 1,000 years or two, and because the land is just so massive, North America is so massive, and they just landed here, crossing the Pacific Ocean, probably from Easter Island, ending up in Peru and ending up in Norte Cinco, which is dated to 3,500 BC or more. So Norte Cinco collapses around 1,600 BC, which happens to be the date of the Santorini eruption. I don't know how much of an effect that volcano would have over the whole planet, but we know from Krakatoa that these massive, supermassive volcanoes can have a geopolitical effect on society, and it shifts cultures. Just as the spreading of North America, more people want after that volcano went off, agriculture was being kind of decimated in some parts of Europe, so more people from Europe migrated really quickly to America during that time period, and it just caused more influx. So that's why I think that there's a change in the Native American culture around that date. So I would say mound builders go back to at least that date.
So Loss said, I don't know if you can see it on your computer. He says we didn't come from anywhere.
Okay. Well, you came from somewhere. We all came from Africa originally.
I disagree with that. Just the simple fact that the megalithic structures that are in South America outdate the pyramids in Egypt.
Yeah, but the ones in Sudan outdates the ones in Egypt also.
Well, Sudan's part of Egypt. I categorize as Nubia as Egypt.
Well, the oldest the pyramids that are older than, there are many pyramids that are older than Peru. Even Peru, they said there's pyramids in Bosnia that they haven't been able to dig deep into.
What's his name? That guy that promoted that in Bosnia. He's kind of a Bosnian nationalist, and I think he's really scraping the barrel there to say that this is a pyramid. It's a mountain that happened to be terraced. It was terraced. Clearly, there was some kind of agricultural terracing or something going on that mountain, and there were caves in it that people dug out. But it's not an architectural structure fully. It's more of a landscape project, I would say at the very least. But it's not a true pyramid like what you see in Mesoamerica or in Egypt.
Okay, fair.
No,
the Neanderthals have nothing to do with civilization, because the Neanderthals and proto-humans, they're all hunter-gatherers. The populations were too small. They didn't develop swords, so we're not talking about that time period.
It's fascinating because I do ask a lot of archaeologists and geologists and historians, Egyptologists, and so on and so forth. I've actually talked to them on Facebook, Twitter, and stuff like that. And I've asked them what is their idea of a civilization, and each one of them all agreed that they can't come up with an idea of a civilization.
That's the liberal archaeologists, though. They like to add a term that we don't really like to use anymore because it gets touchy. But Dr. Miano was clear. He basically said if you have a clear urban center with a king, a priestly class, a warrior, an army, steel sword or iron swords, you have bow and arrows, you're at a point where you could become an empire like the Persians. But in the Mesoamerican cultures, specifically in North America, there's no evidence that they were an empire, but they might have been a confederation of tribes that were aware of each other and trading. Because the land was just so massive, it was hard to control when there's billions of acres of trees in the way.
You know what? I'm going to do something. What is the oldest what is the oldest Native American indigenous people in America? Do you know?
Inuit.
We wouldn't know their names, but we give them some kind of categorization name based off the recent ancestors of them. We don't know. It would be Poverty Point for when it comes to civilization.
I just want to know. Hey, Lost. Hey, tell me what you know about, because he's in the comments. Tell me what you know about the oldest Native Americans. And the reason why I'm asking is because I want. There's a specific reason why I'm asking for this, because I know the discussion right now is that Native Americans didn't come from somewhere, so I'm assuming that what he thinks is that they've always been here. And then
They have, like, there are Japanese scientists that have done a lot of research in Mesoamerica, and they have seen connections with the Ainu, genetic DNA connections with the Ainu culture in Hokkaido. And they're
Okay.
saying that, and though Ainu has a connection with the Siberians, so, but there's also DNA connections with people from Taiwan, the Polynesians. So there's some kind of divergence happening with the Siberians and people from Taiwan coming towards the Pacific Ocean, probably taking boats at a very early date, before 3,500 BC, and ending up in Peru. And I think there are some
No, because at that
most
time there's plenty of land bridges. Now, at this
No,
point, it's possible. No?
that hypothesis have been kind of overturned now because
By
the ice.
who? You know what? Fuck those guys. Look, I took a land bridge. All right.
Would you want to travel through Alaska or just take a boat off the coast and follow the beaches?
you muted yourself, Sauce. You muted
Oh,
yourself.
sorry.
No, it's interesting because I think both you guys can be right. I believe they probably came by water, and some of them probably traveled. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
possibility.
It's
You know,
both, but majority I think came by sea.
yeah, and that could be very
Island
possible. Because think about it, the terrain to travel by those land bridges were in a time where it was very, very cold, and there's not that many animals and plants growing at that time. So you have to
They would
basically
not survive.
Yeah, it would be hard. They would, but it would probably be a lot harder.
It would be like a bottleneck. Like, let's say 5,000 are migrating across Alaska. Maybe only 100 or less would survive. So yeah, but the majority, maybe about 2,000 people, were able to travel island hopping, eventually getting to Peru. So the population, that's where the genetic DNA has to kind of help us. But one hypothesis now is that they still came from the Bering Strait, but they were actually taking canoes or some kind of boat and following the coastline, because they can land on the beaches and make a fire there and feel safe and keep following that coastline until hopping from flat coast to flat coast until they get away from the cliff sides, and then eventually they end up in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, see, like I said, it's interesting because, like I said, I did an article. Let me bring it back up because I like to show when I did an article on the Ocmulgee Mounds that's in Atlanta, Georgia. Oh man, don't tell me it's doing this again. I gotta log in different way. It's giving me problems like it always does. I don't know why. But I did an article on Ocmulgee Mounds, and when you walk in, as soon as it logs me in, I'll be able to pull it up. When it logs you, when you walk into the Ocmulgee Mound Museum itself, and the first things you're going to see, here it is, it's about to pop up right now. I'm gonna have to share a screen because I don't want to, not be correct on what I'm saying. When you first walk in, you'll see these 4 little pictures right here. And the one that sticks out to me, what the hell is that?
I hear
That's
music.
guy sauce. That's guy sauce. He's over there jamming. So you got 17,000 years ago, right? So and this is how far back the people in this land went back. And this is in Atlanta, Georgia. So obviously there had to have been a different type of group of individuals that was either here or migrating here, right? And you'll be able to find that through the artifacts and stuff like that, because the oldest artifacts that they have that can date this 17,000 years ago is throughout their whole museum, right? Like I have a whole bunch of pictures of what I took a lot of it. Newcomers in old land. I mean, it literally says it right here. And I can't zoom in any more than that. But it says, when large groups of newcomers show up in your homeland, what should you do? And it tells you that, different Southern Indian towns, confederation, and leaders chose to interact with newcomers from Europe in different ways, right? Talks about the trade in goods. The Muskogee language is spoken throughout the Confederacy, although consisting of many nations who have a speech peculiar to themselves. You know, it's interesting because they had to come from somewhere, right? And
Well, there was dispersal after Cahokia collapsed. Like what we see, like Native Americans living in teepees. No, that the majority of Native Americans were not living in teepees. That's like Western Plains. That invention was like later in history. But after Poverty Point collapsed and then Cahokia collapsed, it just kind of fractured back to a
right
more
here,
primitive state. But they
see,
were
so
like civilization collapsed.
so this is a map of the mounds in the eastern North America, right? These are
Yeah,
all
then
the mounds, right? So let me
like
zoom
three of
in.
those.
So this one, the one that I went to was, where's it at? Okmulgee is right here, right?
No, Central Georgia. Okay.
Yep. And then you got
Are you
Rocky
reading
Eagle
the
over here.
comments?
Let me see.
Ambridge is not how we natives are
NPS.
here. Well, it is.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
gonna
not
bring
like
this.
okay. I do agree with him actually. That
Look
theory
at
has been
you,
kind of
source. Look at you,
lamp.
lost, busting out a source. Love it.
Yeah, I'm about to look at it in a second, bring it up. But yeah, like right here, it said, we have
Lawsuit is jealous.
we have 1, 2, 3, 4,
Lost, why
4
don't you come up
mounds.
on here? Why don't you
Yeah,
come up and join us?
yeah. I sent him. I told him if
State
he wants to.
representative.
Yeah, if you want to jump in here, Lost, just let me know. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll bring you up here. Well, I'll send you the link in a second.
You can see how there's a cultural connection with the flat top mounds. Like that architectural style is coming from some original inventor, original designer, and
Mhm.
you have to find the oldest mound, and that's probably where the place is.
Yeah, I'm about to bring his source up now in a second. Let's see. How do I let me pop this up? Let me stop sharing. You can go back to your. I'm gonna bring this back up. But yeah, that's interesting because that when you look at the time frame, you wonder, the different time frames of which individual came, because you even have the Clovis culture too, right? So, oh shoot, we lost.
Yeah, well, Clovis culture is just referring to that specific arrowhead design, and it was pretty universal for Central America. I mean, central part of the U.S. where it kind of dispersed from. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't call it. We're talking about the difference between civilization and hunter gatherers. Like this site is a civilization, or it's a fortification town. It's beginning the stages of being a city, and it has walls. I mean, this artist rendering doesn't do it justice. Obviously, they don't have all the details, but there's some central mouse, central authority. Like this is the mayor of the town, okay, and he's the chieftain. And then there's some kind of dynastic lineage connected to him or her, and they have some kind of orderly or militaristic and fortification to protect their resources. So these towns were like a dynasty, and each of these settlements had a palisade wall. A lot of them did. One in Indiana, one here at Troyville, which got completely destroyed by modern times in the 20th century. And they had an 82-foot mountain. It probably was taller than that at one time, but there's stories from I think it was DeSoto who said that the mound could have been like, I think that what did that paper say or the book. I forgot, but it could have been like at 90 feet tall or more. So they ran into these settlements, and not all these settlements they're not unified with each city, state, or town settlement.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's so many languages. They weren't unified like the Persians or the Egyptians. Like the Egyptians are categorized to be the first true nation state in the geopolitical terminology. That's why I say it's Atlantis. It's the first true nation state. There were no nation states like Göbekli Tepe or Sumer or Babylon. It was Egypt that was the first. And then it wasn't until like the Mayans that you have nation states forming and in Tenochtitlan or Teotihuacan. And that's when you get real consolidation of power and building a massive infrastructure. So it takes time to do that. It's hard to do that in an area where all you have is dirt. If you don't have enough stone, like at Poverty Point, there wasn't enough stone to use any megaliths, just some limestone blocks, but they're like 400 miles north. So they had to go upstream to get that. So it was harder to create and consolidate power just because the landmass was just so vast in North America.
Let me tell you. So I always like to talk about haplogroups. That's something that I always talk about. I always say haplogroups because what you guys are saying is interesting to me because, like I said, I've heard different different ideas and theories about the where these individuals came from and stuff. And one thing that Lost presented, let's see what he says. Here are some actual facts don't get talked about exist. Okay. Then he talks, you don't get the language differences of 1,000 tribes in a short time. That's true too, right? But also in Africa, you also have to remember, in
Thousands of
Africa,
years.
yeah, you also have to, I showed already that they go back 17,000, at least 17,000 years just in that area in Atlanta. So
It doesn't
of
take
course,
long to make a language because if there's one chieftain and he has his high priest, he's going to tell that high priest, we need to make a unified language or some kind of symbolic writing system. And once he orders that, just like the Korean language was made in less than 100 years. Even the Japanese katakana and hiragana, that's modern writing system. So it just like, an author like Tolkien can make up a whole language. So it can be pretty fast, but most likely it takes a few decades to a couple hundred years. But they've had thousands of years, so that's why there's thousands of languages.
okay.
Because as the population increases, you have more family groups, more splintered family groups and dynasties popping up because the population is increasing, and that's why you get all these languages bubbling up.
Okay, so look, so this is interesting, and I like this. He also says God sauce. He's not Jello. He's just clearing the air. He says send him the. I'm gonna send him the link again. Let me see if I can send him the link again.
Join us, Brother Sue. Join us.
Let me see.
I'll be right back. I just need to turn my ear on.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That gives him time to come in. Let's see. God damn it! I hate how this works on X. How you try to search people's names is different than it is on the computer. It's a lot easier on the computer.
Computer version
on the not on the computer, on the iPod. What's his? Look up his handle for me. I don't know if I'm typing it in right.
I can't back out. Otherwise, I'll back
out.
You know what?
You know what? Let me just go on my phone. This would be easier.
Actually, wait a minute. Hold on. At Lost,
send me
at Lost Zoo SIOUX1.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's probably why. I couldn't find it with the one. So it makes it so much harder on here we go. Makes it so much harder on fucking PC, man. I don't know why.
Because the HTML coding sucks donkey balls.
All right, so look, so while we're waiting for him to come up here, I'm gonna show y'all guys something. Oh wait, he just sent me a message, I think.
I'm just reading this. Mythology.
So I'm gonna show y'all guys this real quick. So you guys always know I always talk about I love the facts and love the the information. This is what he sent me here. Let me pull it up on here. So he said, of course, we're gonna play this real quick while we're waiting for him to come in. Let me know if y'all can hear it. Can you hear it?
Yep.
It's about 7 minutes long. We'll do a few minutes of it. If y'all want to do the whole thing, we can.
My name is Shina Berigal, and I'm a member of the Oglala Lakota tribe. Wind Cave is very special to us. In our language, we call it Onia Oshoka, or Maka Okloke, which means the earth is breathing. And the reason this cave is so special to us is that this is the site of our emergence story, which is part of our larger creation story. Now, in Lakota culture and history are passed on through an oral tradition that is stories going from generation to generation. And for that reason, there can be a lot of variations of the same story. But in our culture, what's important to us is not, the smaller details, but the larger idea. And the larger idea in any story you hear about Wind Cave is that Lakota people emerged out of Wind Cave. So this story was passed on to me by Wilmer Mesteth, who was our tribal historian and an elder in our tribe. Wilmer unfortunately passed away towards the beginning of 2015, but in our culture, when our elders pass away like this, the way that we honor them and keep their memory alive is to keep telling the stories they told us and to keep teaching the things that they taught us. What emergence means in an anthropological sense is that a people believe that they lived underground and they emerged onto the surface of the earth. The story I tell is a little different because in this story, Wind Cave is a passageway. And somewhere, hidden deep inside this passageway, is a portal to the spirit world.
I just want to stop it right there for a second. This is how stories get changed, because you heard what she said. I'm going to change it. It's just changed a little bit. It's a little bit different, right? So when she tells a story, she's going to tell her story, which is okay, right? You got to add more information into it and stuff like that. But I also want to point out that it says that they came from that cave, right? Within, right? What do I always say? The gods came within the depths of the sea, right? How far does this cave actually go down? I mean, maybe we'll find out in a minute. But it says that
I was just gonna say, I think that's just a basic observation that the Native Americans knew that in primeval times, meaning like during the Ice Age, people were living in caves. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean there are lots of caves near St. Louis in Missouri, and there is definitely evidence of Native Americans going in these caves and coming out. We have their bones, so yes, they're probably symbolically connecting a real idea that people were living in caves before civilization, and then they came out and then they were living on the flatlands in the valleys. So yeah, there's a symbolic literal connection to that, just as there's a literal connection to the story of Atlantis when you look into the details. So it's not that these are all just myths. There are details in the myths that are just kind of poetically established in a way to make it more entertaining. But they're basically saying, yeah, we once were cavemen and then we came out. That's
no,
basically it.
Well, you also have to remember languages change over time.
Mm-hmm.
So facts that, and also people with being told that we only had a verbal language history when we both had, in fact, a written, sign, and verbal language history, which has been proven time and time again. But with the introduction of colonialism with the settlers and the church coming over and destroying many things, including the factor that there's only 6 Mayan codexes left on the planet, apparently.
Yep. I got 2 of them right here.
Yeah, out of thousands of them.
Yeah, I got 2 of them out the 4 right here.
So my understanding is that some things might change just due to the simple factor of the memory of that person and the language changing. Just the same thing as how some cultures will claim or state that we were matriarchal, so some of them were matriarchal, but that's the closest word in English that we could find to it. It's not necessarily the exact of it. It's just the closest definition of it that we can find in English into the translation. That is something that every single nation all throughout this continent and other places as well find too. The ideology or thought pattern of civilization is when you're taking it and you're putting it up against what Europeans classify as civilization, comparatively to what other places who have their own belief system, their own values, their own morals, and their own idea of what civilization is. Now,
yeah, but there's a universal understanding.
For Plains Indians, we lived within the ecosystem of the environment in which we lived in. We lived in balance and harmony of it.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. That's
No,
why
because
we
Native
have
Americans
treaties.
were trying to develop civilization. They're trying to fight against nature so they can
No.
grow in their power.
No.
That's why we have evidence of their mounds.
Of what?
That's architecture. They're fighting against civilization,
You
fighting
have
against nature because nature's trying to kill them.
having teepees is not fighting against nature. It's just
It's
housing.
protecting from the elements. That's the basic point of
Sure.
a teepee.
Every
Protecting from
single
the elements.
society,
They're fighting
every
against
single
nature.
human being society across the planet, no matter where you
Yeah.
go.
Because nature's trying to kill you.
So that doesn't mean that you don't live within that balance of that ecosystem either, as best as possibly can, while still maintaining having housing.
Yeah,
Is that right?
that's where the idea of economy comes from. Ecosystem. You're trying to create sustainability through the consumption of
Well,
resources.
there you go.
But in
But
reality,
not exactly
about-
in the same consumption idea thought pattern as Europe.
that's not
has.
true because Native Americans burned down thousands of
We
acres to
did,
build these
we
settlements
did, we
because
did
they weren't cities.
many different things to balance out to make land more accessible for farming of corn. And
Yeah, I was
other
just about to say that, and I'm going to show you. Go ahead. I'm going to show you. Keep going. I'm sorry.
It's you have.
No,
to
you're right.
separate-
I'm about to back you up right here because
All
you
right.
said corn, and I
I
got.
think we should.
I sit here
this
and I
Disney
talk with
idea-
I talk with almost every day with ecological scientists, eco scientists, and lots of people within that time frame or in that wheelhouse, if you will. And every single one of them keeps saying, look at all the different things that we can achieve if we just took a page from what the natives were talking about and what the natives were doing.
So here you go. So
Right,
here's
the
a.
natives are trying to create civilization. That's
So
what they're trying to do.
when you talked about balance, that's actually true, and I'm going to tell you why. I just switched out my grass in my front yard. It took me 9 years to do this, and I'm pretty happy. I used to have St. Augustine, and I wanted Bermuda grass, so I had to dig it all up. And in between of me learning how to get the best grass and stuff, I learned that you have to grow it, and sometimes you have to burn it. Now, when you said that, when you was talking about the burning of the corn and stuff, they did have to do that to balance out the land. I don't know the ins and outs about it because I'm not a farmer. Even farmers do that. They burn their own crops sometimes to do certain things to balance out whatever it is that they do. But here's a picture that I took when I was there. That's the charred corn, and you can see how small the corn is. First of all, corn is no bigger than what you can put in your hand. Like literally, I'm telling you, this ain't the kind of corn that you get from the
Pretty small.
yeah, it's really, really, really small. So, and I'm not sure exactly why.
They
These
hibernate over time.
Yeah, I don't know why these were charred. What the reason is, because it didn't have anything near it or anything like that. As you can see, it just said charred corn, and then of course it had animal remains and bones and stuff near it. But what's interesting is that
what usually ends up happening is that you'll take not only that, or you'll properly take care and maintain a forest so it doesn't overrun with like what we see today with a shit ton of deadfall, where all it takes is a lightning strike and all of a sudden you have mass fires, out of control fires. You also have to work, if you are farming, you have to work like growing crops of say rice, corn, and other things. You have to maintain that land area so that it gives the best possible yield and it is healthy land in order for growing, fertile soil, in order for growing the best possible crops to feed your whole entire community. Whether that's a big city or whether that's a small community, you're still working on trying to maintain that balance in the system while still working within the ecosystem of the environment in which you live in. The idea of stepping out of that and trying to act like you own it and control it and you are the big honcho above all things is not a philosophy that indigenous people have. We've never had that philosophy. We've never had that philosophy.
We have proof that they built cities of 20,000 people.
You have cities down south. You have longhouses on the east and west coast. But those were housings that were done specifically because in the way in which they were able to be around the food supply and possibly grow the best crops possible. And yes,
I'm just saying,
Mayans,
it sound
Aztecs,
like-
and other cultures further down south, yes, had big cities. They had big
Yeah.
population.
and they wanted to
Yes.
expand their empire.
And some of them were doing a little bit of expansion.
A lot.
Yes, but you can't explain that expansion by the example of the Tainos either, because the Tainos lived in a day and age right beside and next door to the Aztecs and the Mayans, and they were still a
Because they
thriving
didn't have the
generation.
resources to dominate. It all comes
Well-
down to which civilization can gather as many people as they can to create an army, to consume resources and spread their religion or their
That's
language
not
or whatever.
necessarily the close. You're
We
taking a
see evidence of
European.
geopolitics
taking-
in the Native
You're
Americans.
taking an example of what
It's not a Western idea.
home- It is a Western idea, and you're
No, what
putting
about
it
China?
onto indigenous.
China built mounds. they expanded.
China did what they do.
Yeah, we talking
It's
about
a-
America, bro.
it's
We can't talk about
universal.
China.
I'm
We
saying-
can't.
Yeah,
We can't.
we're
We
not talking
can't.
about.
We
I
can't
can't-
bring
I-
China in here. We got. We
you
are
can't-
talking about
you
America,
can't say
man.
all of
universal.
Asia. You can look over at Asia and with different influences, Asia grew, and with their own influences, they grew,
Mm-hmm. That's
and
true.
how they
whoever
grew
won the
on their
battle.
own.
Spread.
It's no different from you can't take Scottish and Irish and say that they're identical to the English or French.
Well, now you basically can say they're a bunch of white people from Europe. I mean,
Well, do you know what I mean?
see,
Do you
Well,
know
they
what
were
I mean?
Spaniards. They were definitely Spaniards.
Yeah.
I mean, depending
cultures
on what.
eat other cultures. Okay, in geopolitics, which is what I studied in my undergrad, we see evidence of geopolitics in Mesoamerica. And the point of geopolitics is expand the consumption of your resources. You want to expand your power because your population is exploding. So you need to expand more land,
Well-
consume more maize. And it's a paradoxical thing we see perpetuate every civilization. Because as the population grows, you need to expand your power base. It's as simple as that.
So for us Plains Indians, because I'm from the Lakota Sioux Nation, I'm not Aztec, I'm not Mayan. I can't speak 100% fully for them. That would be disrespectful of me and their culture.
Well, the Lakota probably came from the mound builders civilization. Probably
The
from
what?
Cahokia. The mound builders. They probably originally came from Poverty Point or Cahokia or Adena, those cultures. And when the Europeans came, they broke up and they spread out because they're moving west. So a lot of the Native Americans you see in the west, they did not live over there at 2000 BC. They stayed east of the Mississippi or near the Mississippi.
My people have
They
always
tried.
been in the center of the plains.
Oh,
What
sure,
nowadays
sure.
is known
For
as
100 years.
as North South Dakota, the eastern part of Montana, the western part of I think it's Oklahoma that's next door to them, to South of North Dakota, as well as just a little south of South Dakota, and clear on up into Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta in Canada. Those were my
But
people's
most of
lands.
those migrations
so-
are
hey, so-
modern-day migrations.
Hey, so correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm actually looking at something real quick. The oldest artifact in South Dakota is at the Jim Pitt site, which is located 20 miles of Custer in the Black Hills, and it dates back to 11,300 years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, probably. Doesn't mean it's a civilization.
No, I'm
though.
asking him because he says he's from.
That's relatively close to accurate. It does go back even further. But with the inability of the technology that we have today to do a full and technology keeps advancing, and I'm sure we can all agree on that, because what we were able to realize and know 20, 30, 40 years ago has advanced tremendously today with technology. And we all agree, I'm pretty sure we can all agree on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we can all agree upon that. And as technology grows and we get more and more better with technology, the more and more information comes out that we can understand, and we can have that conversation. And more information comes into the surface for us to look and see at. Just
And
the
the
same
information is
as like,
becoming very clear what the history of the past was.
so the
There was
buffalo
no
herd was in the
Stage
millions.
civilization.
The buffalo herd was in the millions. My people, before they decided, the U.S. government decided to go and kill and almost put them out of extinction to starve us onto reservations, managed to look after that herd and maintain that herd and not take it. We took what we needed to survive and live.
But if your
managed
population
that.
was in the tens of millions, you probably would have killed.
We
more.
our population was
It's about
huge.
population.
You
and
have
power.
you have Lakota, Dakota, Oglala, Yankton, Wapitan. You have a whole bunch of mass loads of tribes within the Sioux Nation that are
But their
not just small
population
little
wasn't strong
populations.
enough to push back the Europeans.
If they were
stagnated.
small enough, why was it that it was like 10-1 for the 7th Cavalry at the Battle of Little Bighorn? There were
Doesn't matter. They still
thousands
lost.
of
They
us
still
indigenous
lost.
people. No, 7th Cavalry lost.
So I'm trying to understand.
You don't have
So
a Native American civilization like you don't have. Japan has won. They push out the Americans. They push out the
You know
Europeans.
what?
yeah, but
They are
we
You know,
can't.
yeah, you know what? If
The
you're if
Americans
that
won.
I mean that's some of the bigotry and racism
No,
that
it's
needs to
reality
be
of
removed
politics.
because you
Welcome
didn't
to the
win.
real
You
world.
don't sign
You
treaties
get
with
killed, you don't
people
have
that
bigger
you
guns.
beat. You don't sign treaties with people that you beat. You
Well,
know
You know,
that. I
what are
know
you
that.
looking for?
You know that. I know that. Because every society around the
geopolitics,
world, every society around the world that has treaties with other nations, they didn't go in and beat them. They signed treaties because they couldn't beat them. And whether or not the U.S. honored those treaties or completely destroyed them as soon as they were out of our sight is not our fault, nor is it our
not saying that.
responsibility.
It is the fault that the fact that the civilization before the Europeans came, specifically the mound builders, were not able to consolidate and unify into an empire like the Mayans and the Aztecs. If they had done that, they would
Why?
have been
We
able
had
to push
respect
out
for
the
our
Europeans.
own individuality
No.
of nations.
There was division. That's why the
No.
Native Americans got defeated, because there's division. They were
No.
killing each other.
United States wouldn't even exist today because the founding fathers would have been grabbed up and put in chains and hauled back to England to be hung for treason against the crown of England if it wasn't for us indigenous people standing up and fighting with
In the
them.
United States, if they did not invent the sailboat that can cross transverse seas back and forth, sure. It's because of technology.
You say that, but like seriously, you realize like the Europeans didn't even get the Gatling gun or the small cannon until they went to Turkey, and they also had to get gunpowder from China. And
Okay, but they improved upon the technology.
No, they had to go because they didn't know how to do that. They had no idea how to do it
and made it better. That's the point. Japan learned from American technology to make cars.
Us indigenous people learned how to take your guns and use them too, just as good as any sharpshooter or any military personnel that you have that you hold dear and in high esteem. Why do you think the Rangers were taught how to do what they do?
I'm not denying we learned from the Native Americans. I'm not denying that. But at the same time, it's not because
we're not
uncivilized.
We're not uncivilized savages. We just had a different belief.
But after the collapse of the mound builders, they became more disunified and fractured. And that is what led to the conquest of the Europeans. If they had invented steel and the sword and had gathered somehow got horses,
do you know who
before the Europeans,
what's his name again?
Survived.
Canada's top historian, no, not historian, not Green. Canada's top historian or eco historian or whatever. He's an Asian guy. He lives in Vancouver. He's got his own TV program, The Nature of Things. I just can't remember his name at this very second. David Suzuki.
Oh, that sounds familiar, actually.
Yeah, that's because he's Canada's top anthropologist. That's it. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So he discovered, and the discovery had come 500 years before the land bridge. They found an arrowhead, a metal arrowhead, attached to a bone, and then the wooden shaft that came out from underneath the ice. That carbon dates and all their datings brings it to 500 years before the land bridge theory. So we knew about how to work metal. The Mayans and Aztecs down south knew how to work with gold and silver.
They never invented bronze.
But they didn't do it in the sense of the factor how Europeans' ideology went to.
It's not European. The bronze was invented by the Babylonians. And
It's the same thing. It's the same thing with the West Coast and East Coast with copper. Right? The West Coast natives have a whole bunch of copper that goes all the way back, long before
yes,
first
they never
contact.
learned how to smelt it above 1,000 degrees.
When you look in the prairies, if you look in the prairies, you could look up St. Paul's in Manitoba. That's Chief Pegwis. And he was kicked out. Him and his people were kicked out of the community there and put onto a reservation with other tribes because they were doing far better than the richest European families in Canada. And what they were doing with metalworking, all kinds of different things. And that's literally a historical fact in Canada.
Okay, but how does that affect the geopolitical situation that led to now?
Well, what it states and shows is that we weren't uncivilized or didn't have technology. We just didn't really, if you didn't need it in the prairies, why do you need it? You don't have pots and pans, metal pots and pans that weigh down your tripod that you're carrying your teepee and all your goods hide in when a tornado storm comes, or if you're chasing after a herd of buffalo, and clanking and making all kinds of noise when you're trying to catch a herd in order to get enough food to feed your people for the whole summer or winter.
You know, it's interesting because you guys are
Right?
making me think for a second. Like, okay, like
Right.
you're right.
I mean,
why would you need swords if you
technology.
wasn't planning on killing somebody, right? Like if you didn't need
They
swords.
were killing people.
No, they were. They had
not
their
like
wars.
my people.
They had a sword, they would have used it.
I agree in the sense that yes, we did have
Original sin.
skirmishes. We did have skirmishes, but not to the extent in which is being blown out of proportion today.
Yes, you're right. Because the land was so vast, it was not easy enough to interact with people. Whereas in Babylonia, you're not that far away from Egypt and Turkey. There's so much interaction because there's no trees in the way, no mountains in the way, hardly. So there's more warfare in the Middle East because of the type of geography there. Whereas in America, you got giant acres of forest in the way, so you're separated by rivers and by valleys. So that's why there was less warfare. But when they did interact, yes, there was
disagreements, and because we were using the English terminology for most of the factor of having a matriarchal society, if you will.
It wasn't matriarchal. It
really wasn't. It wasn't.
Cahokia.
No, it wasn't, because our
Cahokia,
women were the ones that owned the teepee.
They
owned the
sacrificed
home.
women at Cahokia in the hundreds.
Where?
We have a mound in Cahokia with hundreds of women in a burial mound.
Was that my people?
No,
Well, it's Native Americans. It's Native
Americans derived from a city-state. Cahokia was the largest city-state in North America of 30,000 people or more. When that fractured, those 30,000 people spread out.
Okay, in all of my history and knowledge that I've been passed down from generation to generation, not anywhere in my history does it state that we were a patriarchal society. We were more closer to an egalitarian society, if anything.
Yeah, a small
that
tribal level, that's correct. But when you start gaining more and more population,
even with the 7 council fire of the Sioux Nation, which encompassed all of the Sioux Nation, we had our women who were the owners of the home. They owned the house, not the man. The women did. They were the ones that made the decision on whether we went to war or not, because they were the ones that had to deal with the aftermath. of the loss of warriors and hunters. They were the ones left to deal with that with the children and elders still at the camp. They were the ones that made that decision. There were a lot
Not
of
at the
things.
level of
Our
civilization,
lineage,
though.
our
At
lineage,
the
our
tribal level.
you're
Yes.
at mine with my tribe, yes, very much so. It is exactly the way in which I'm saying.
But I'm just saying, when you gain a certain, when you break this threshold of population being like 3,000 people in one town, it becomes more patriarchal because there's competition between men and dynasties and families.
All
Just
of my
natural.
nation doesn't matter how many people we have in our community.
In a city
It's
state,
still-
it matters.
When we're stuck being forced into what nowadays today is colonial cities, then we have no choice but to go along with the colonial ideology of patriarchy.
But that's the same principle in Mesoamerica. There were colonial tribes that conquered other tribes, and they human sacrificed them, just as the Aztecs fighting against Tenochtitlan or the Mayans or whatever.
Well, I'm
They're
not
spreading their colonial
I'm
influence.
not from
It's a
that
micro
nation.
level.
I'm not
I'm just
from that
saying,
nation.
it's not just a
So
European issue.
I can't fully discuss, like I can't fully comment on whether or not some other nation from some other down south, further down south, fully.
I'm just saying it's
as
universal
we-
everywhere on the planet. The
No, I
Muslims
mean,
conquered other
no.
people, the Chinese did.
It wasn't fully universal because we're not a monolith.
Idea conquest is universal. That's all I'm saying.
We're not a monolith. So
No,
like
because
what
there's-
one
because
tribe
you're
might
both
do,
fractured.
well, like what one tribe might do is not the same as what another tribe might do. We're not a
But
monolith.
they're still shaped by the geography that forces them into certain collisions. So if there's a choke point on a river and there's another tribe that wants to control that choke point, then there might be some political collision there, and you might have
Sure,
to kill
and
that one tribe.
you ever heard of stickball?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, stickball was one of the things that we used to work through disagreements. And war was the only thing, like the last resort. Because
Yeah.
in the
It's
climate
same
that we
thing
lived
today.
we didn't have, heaters inside of our homes. We had a fireplace inside of our homes.
They had those. I heard they use these clay balls. They would heat them up, and sometimes they.
Some of those, some
Right,
some
the
tribes had that, yes. Not every tribe had that.
Yeah, it comes down to. Yeah, I'm
What
just
works
saying
within
that-
the ecosystem and the environment that you're in. So like I
I-
said, having metal
just saying-
pots and pans and metal things make too much clinking noise and too heavy to carry around and drag around, and you can't move fast enough if you got a shit ton. If you live in, say, Tornado Alley and you need a teepee in order to get up and move right away and get out of Dodge before the teepee or the tornado hits. If you're chasing a
Or
herd
you
of
need a chief
buffalo,
to decide to where to establish
Yeah.
a city.
So,
they have to.
if you're hunting buffalo, but if you're hunting buffalo, you don't need clanking noises that make noises that scare the herd away, and then you're starving. You know what I mean? So there is still that balance and harmony of trying to live in balance and harmony with the environment on which you live in.
But you don't want to be. You don't want your tribe to be completely subdued by that ecology, because then you're always going to stay primitive. You want to evolve and keep evolving.
I
That
never
means to
seen
move from
the
region to
stuff we're
region.
watching right here. I don't see that as primitive.
Well, all
It
humans
might
were
be
primitive at
primitive.
one time.
It might be primitive in the ideology of what Europe.
It's not ideology. It's objective reality of how technology evolves over time.
Well,
People
we've
start
managed to
primitive
do
like a
it. We
seed,
have
and they grow into a
technology. I
tree.
mean, I'm talking to you right now through a computer that was made in China.
China.
I'm talking to you right now through the internet on a
China.
computer that was made in China.
No, I get what both you guys are saying. I could tell you Enigma has this peculiar way of thinking of a civilization, just like everybody.
I don't like the Disney idea where people like Disney's portrayed, Pocahontas.
Oh,
like,
I don't like
Native
Disney idea
Americans
either.
Native Americans are living in harmony of nature and lovey-dovey.
No.
No, that's not the reality. They wanted to grow in their power, just like the Aztecs and the Mayans, but it depended on the environmental circumstances that led to their power growth. That's why
No,
we
I
see
think
that
that's what he's saying is he agrees with you on that. I think you disagree with
wants to
him
stay
because he's
primitive
saying
because you'll be conquered.
no. What
no.
it depends on what you could. Well, let's put it like this, okay?
Aliens come, we better
No,
prepare.
no. Let's take your concept into what we know of as of today. Iraq and Afghanistan, their technology was nowhere near on par as ours here in the United States. We had helicopters, we had tanks, we've had artillery, we've had every type of weapon that you can possibly think about: ships, cruiser missiles, hellfire, all kinds of different weapons. We didn't conquer that land. Okay, these guys were literally fighting us in basketball jerseys and Jordans. I swear to God, I got pictures of dead dudes in
But we
Jordans.
did kind of win because the contracts are being signed now.
Well,
There's $1 billion contracts being signed with
see,
Goldman Sachs.
but this is the thing:
They-
contracts are being signed, but
China.
guess who's in control of those contracts? It's not America. It's them.
Well, I'm
And
saying in geopolitics, when America invades Iraq, there's a long-term ramification, just like in Vietnam. Even though we lost Vietnam, Vietnam is, even though communist, is our ally now. Ironically, because we had
But
so much influence afterwards, and because of the war as trigger, that now Vietnam is siding with trade with America against China because we have more influence in Vietnam, even though they're communist.
let me explain to you how these allies work. So these people say we're allies, right? And they say we're friends, right?
Yeah.
Now I want you to understand something. We give them more than they give us. Okay, so it would be good of them to say they want to be allies of us. But the point is that contracts are being signed, but we can't. Those people over there is not letting anything happen unless they want it to happen. And what I mean by that is that look how we left Afghanistan. Like I said, those people were really fighting us in Jersey and Jordan.
It wasn't the people. It really was the geography wasn't conducive.
Yeah, it was the geography, but the people knew the geography. That's the problem. It's the people. The people. No, listen. I'm telling you. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. These people still live the same way that some of these Native Americans, which you will see right here in this video. They have tents still over there. They still do the same kind of cooking. Yes, but guess what? Their geography is what kept them from getting their asses whooped.
But the geography is limiting their power because they don't have access to.
Well, they don't see. That's the thing. They don't want power as far as.
But if they had those resources, they would want power.
No, look, listen. Okay, say that.
People always want power.
You're thinking you're
fastest growing.
What is the whole entire world wants to be like Europe?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I get because that's what I'm getting.
Because want to be like China.
No, listen to me. I'm telling you. Listen, you said that these people, the less technology and this and that, it's easier for them to be conquered. Bro, I'm telling you, somebody that's been over there, that's a damn lie. We could not. Those people knew their land like the Native American knew their land here. The only difference is here in this area in Native America and all this other stuff. There was too many things going on at one time. It wasn't just the Native Americans; it's also the conquering of the Africans, and then you had the Irish. What they called them?
The IRA?
No, the
Irish.
Yeah, the Irish had their little thing going on.
With Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland.
I can't remember what the word for it. What the words were for it. No, I can't remember. But what the point is that there was so much going on in America at one time, and not for nothing. Without the Native Americans and of course the slaves here that came from Africa, America wouldn't have been able to conquer what it was. Because I just got done reading a book about Native Americans and how the people here in Savannah actually are how their land was overtaken and stuff like that. It was because when the Europeans came here, and mostly when they say Europeans, they don't say white people. They usually say Spaniards. The Spaniards came over here and fucked up a lot of shit.
Disease that killed a lot of them.
Yeah,
it was a mixture of three, so a majority of three. So you have Spaniards, French, and English are the three main groups. That's
and
not
what
every single European.
Think about what caused the Europeans to come to America. It was because
we know what the Puritans.
Oh well, no, that's now. I'm going to give you something. This is perfect. This is perfect point for me. No, hold on. This is it. This is going to
Blame
get
the
y'all right
Muslims
here.
too.
So we know that the Native Americans was here way before Christopher Columbus. That's not an argument that anybody here
Yeah.
used to try to make. What I've read, if you actually read about Christopher Columbus, whether you believe he came to the Americas or whatever and did whatever he did, and the many different ones of what they call Christopher Columbus, did you know that everybody that was on that ship was a criminal that they wanted to get rid of from overseas, from Europe?
I've
Meaning
heard
that
that. Yeah.
every single person on Christopher
At
Columbus
first.
ships, the first one, yes, exactly, the very first one, were prisoners from being rapists, being murderers, thieves, and all kinds of stuff. These were not good people.
Yeah.
Now I
It
want you to
sparked the
listen to this for a
piracy.
second. Now I want you to listen to this for a second. Okay. These are people that are not good people. Okay. Their freedom was that they would get on these ships and go find new land. Okay. Some of them would make it, some of them wouldn't. Why? Because of course the journey that it took to get here, from diseases to starvation to, you know, all kinds of stuff, right? But the ones that did make it here, right, or wherever they landed at first, because there's so many different theories. I'm not saying they landed here in America, but I'm talking about the Americas period. The ones that landed there, do you think they automatically became good people? No. What would be the first thing they would try to do? Take over the individuals that was there. So everybody that came from Europe, from the Christopher Columbus ships, they weren't good people. These weren't people that were trying to, they weren't coming here to find land to, okay, so they was given a promise that there was gold here. Okay. And Christopher
They
Columbus,
thought they were landing in Japan. When they first came, they thought, are we in China? Are we in Japan? And then they realized, nope.
and I'm telling you, it's funny because a lot of people talk about, you know, and this is what I want you to understand. And then this is what he means by civilization. That's why I say it's different from every civilization. These individuals supposedly came from a civilization. Europe would steal swords and, you know, armor that was out the ordinary. These people took that stuff and conquered a whole nother group of individuals. Now you have to understand something. Yeah, the Native Americans were fighting among each other, and there was disputes. There's disputes no matter what. You can't get two Christians in a room and not have them dispute and have an argument. Hell, they probably will.
Or two atheists.
Or two atheists, exactly. You can't get two people who have the same idea and not have them argue eventually about their points, right? So there's always going to be disagreements. But these Native Americans, when you say civilized and civilization, I think of it like this. Okay, we consider ourselves civilization today, right? An advanced civilization. And I don't think that swords were necessarily the branch that did everything. It was the gunpowder from China that actually helped the Europeans conquer everything. And the Europeans could not do it themselves. You have to remember, when they came here and they tried to conquer, they had to convince other tribes and other people to come with them.
Make them
so they
fight
had
each other.
Yeah, they had to get them to fight each other. They had to be the person. So you have to understand, when you see civilization in the civilized eyes of the Native Americans, when they had balance and
It's a paradox that I mean, do you know the geopolitical analyst George Friedman? George Friedman basically said, you know, if it wasn't for warfare, you would not have the cell phone. You would not have rockets.
That's true.
You would not have the computer. And ironically, because we perpetuate war, it motivates the private industry to create new technology off the weaponry.
I agree in the sense of, like, with weapons, we wouldn't have nuclear bombs, we wouldn't have cruise missiles, we wouldn't have tanks, we wouldn't have AK-47s, M16s, and so forth of that nature. Yes, without war, yes. But eventuality, we would have computers, internet, cell phones, TVs, all these things without war necessarily having war.
It'll just take longer.
There's just technology that would have came into play either way, with or without war.
Well, it's like going to the moon. Did we go to the moon because we wanted to explore the moon? No, we went there for geopolitical reasons. That was the motivation to go to the moon.
Well,
according to some people in the population, the moon visit was a hoax.
Economists and okay, I don't want to get to that.
I'm just playing.
No, but that's a good point. And see, this is why I like to have discussions on here than Twitter X, is because you see how everybody how they had their own stance on what they believe. But nobody's going outright because this is a different kind of vibe. If you honestly want to learn something, you're not going to come in here and be an asshole. You're going to come in here to learn something. And I agree with both of you guys. I think that my ideas of civilization, I can't even tell you what I believe what a civilization is because of the simple fact that I know the many different criterias that are needed, and those criterias are those things that make up a civilization. There's going to be new things to be added to it, right? Because let's look at it right now.
Politics is something else. Yeah.
Our
It's always
civilization, our civilization now
I don't see the way I see civilization is. Civilization to me is being able to take care of your elderly, your disabled, and your poor without even thinking or blinking an eye about it.
Mhm.
It just
But
should
you
be
might, in order to
basic
protect the
human
elderly
being.
and the poor.
That's basic human fundamental right.
Mhm.
of
But let's say there's
existence.
another tribe that wants to kill your elderly and your children.
Well,
You have
then
weapons
fuck
to protect
them.
them.
There's
Fuck
always
them and
one.
horse they rode in under.
What'd you
It's
say,
it's
Fair?
that paradox of original sin of like people
There's always a
naturally
what
have
if.
distrust.
There's
See-
always going to be a what if.
See, I
Yeah.
look at it this way. Okay. I was amongst the group of people who believed that the Neanderthals at one time were like the lowest forming IQ on the planet of humanoid species, until my opinion changed after seeing that they found the remains of a Neanderthal that was disabled, and that they went in using the medicines of the time that they had available to them, did everything to try and help that individual to
Yeah, it's
heal.
the femur. It was the one with the femur.
Yeah.
The one with the femur.
Yeah.
Like I can't.
Yeah.
Margaret Mead talks about it actually.
Yeah.
She
But we
she's,
see, we see
she
that in
said-
animals too. The idea of empathy, like a
Someone
dog
bring
will
that
try
up.
to
Yeah.
save another dog sometimes, but
I'm
it's
gonna bring
not
that up.
out of love necessarily.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between a dog and a human being, right?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, going back to like Homo naledi or Homo habilis or Homo erectus, they're less empathetic. As they evolve, they're becoming more empathetic because they know they need to survive together against the saber-toothed tigers. But chimpanzees, they have wars in some sense, so we get that primal instinct.
Oh man, you ain't seen some of them TikTok videos, bro, of them chimpanzees going at it, bro. I swear to God, that shit is so funny, bro. I watched the video like 2 weeks ago, bro. I think it was like a couple of weeks ago, bro.
If I may,
They had like 50 fucking monkeys on one side, 50 other monkeys on the other side. Them motherfuckers was looking at each other like, what's
Yeah, I
up?
saw
And
that.
next thing you know, they just started clashing. That shit was so, I was like, God damn. I said, what land they taking over? Somebody took somebody's pineapple or some shit. Somebody was pissed off. Tell me
That's where war comes from.
that shit was funny, bro. If I find it, man, let me see if I can find that fucking video.
I
Yo,
gotta
that
say,
shit was
rebirth. With all due respect, bro, I see Steven there, and I'd like to bring Steven into the conversation too with us, and give Steven an opportunity to say a few things.
Oh, you talking about Gas Sauce? He's over there listening, bro. He listens, man. He's not really he doesn't really talk about mounds too much. Like he's just jamming out real listening. And he's painting right now.
Well, I mean, it's just being respectful, right?
We do this every Saturday, bro. We do this every Saturday, bro. At 9:30 p.m., man. So if you want to join us, we do it for about 2 hours, and we do this all the time, man. It's actually we've been doing it for a month and a half.
An hour and a half.
Yeah, we've been doing
How
it for
you
about
doing, Steven? Good to see you.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Your mic's not working, Steven.
Nope.
No. I don't know if you got to attach it to it or what in the settings. I'm not sure, but nonetheless, in the meantime, I just didn't
here we
want
go.
to be sitting there having Steven sitting in the room and not saying anything and being rude to the fourth party in the or fifth party in the wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, fifth party in the wheel and sitting there, and all of us are talking, and Steven's just sitting there.
I got a few more slides
Hey.
on some other Native
Yeah.
American mound sites if you guys want me to share that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
wanna-
I'm just saying, Igma, like we can't paint all indigenous cultures and tribes with one paintbrush. Just like we can't paint all of Europe with one paintbrush, because you have
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
have
they're
Norwegian,
different.
Icelandic, Scandinavian, English, French, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, and the list goes on.
For
Right?
example, here, yeah, like for example, the Adena culture, they developed their architectural mounds on hilltops. Their little fortification towns on hilltops, while the Cold Creek settlements were in the river valleys. So
Mhm.
they were culturally different, even though they have similar mound building connections of their origins. They probably, if they encountered each other, they probably would have had a war. And they didn't, they spoke different languages probably, even though
Yeah.
they originate from an original source that probably came from Poverty Point. Because cultures, just like the original, the Greeks were killing other Greeks, but it was the Mycenaeans against the Minoans or the
Have you
Hittites.
have
They
you
weren't
have you had a
until-
chance to look into the city that was found in the Amazon from all the clear cutting and LiDAR?
LiDAR.
Yeah,
LiDAR,
they basically
yeah.
found another mound culture.
Yeah,
basically what
that's
mound.
pretty fucking old, bro.
I think
That's
it's about
pretty
the
old.
same date as it's like 1000 BC is what they're putting it at, I think. Not totally sure. I haven't researched too deeply on that, but they're still digging it up. But it's a mound
Yeah.
burial. It's a mound culture because they were basically it was just like the Mississippian
Yeah,
region, but it was a swampy or
yeah. So like different areas, right, within the ecosystem and environment of that area is capable of managing of different things.
But
In
the
regards
environment
to
does
housing.
restrict, but the environment that they're in would restrict their ability to expand their power in the population because of
Well,
the nature of the environment. For example, living in Antarctica,
I look
you're
at
not gonna be able to survive. It's
I look
the
at like
principle of ability.
from what I understand and what I was told about Poverty Point with indigenous communities is that it was a trading hub.
Yeah, well, the trade was coming in,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
wasn't
and
really
that's
going
why
out
you
there.
have the big
like-
circle in the center.
They think it was more like a tributary system. Like they knew the other smaller tribes had to pay tribute into Poverty Point. That's one hypothesis.
No,
Same thing with Egypt.
that's a hypothesis. It's not an actual fact. It's a
They
thought.
based it off because they found copper going to certain types of copper going to
Yeah,
Poverty
but
Point, but
when
not going
you-
back to other locations.
But
guess-
here's a trading society, right? So if your village or your tribe lives in an area where there's a whole bunch of different copper or iron or steel or silver, gold, abalone shells, and so forth, right? When you have those different things to trade and you want to trade them for something else, you're not taking them to bring them back. You're trading them for the things that you want and need that will help your village and your community, right?
Yeah, but there
You-
are
you
systems
see what I
of
mean?
trade- But there are systems of trade where it's more coercive, where if the tribe 10 miles over here in the woodlands doesn't pay us a certain tax, we're going to send 2,000 warriors to kill their tribe
Well,
because they did not pay the tribute.
I
That
can
doesn't
I
happen
can
in
see
Native
I can see okay I can
bigger
see
cultures.
I can see with the theory that or the hypothesis that you played down for us with this, okay? I could see the people who Poverty Point was their home and their community putting kind of like an entrance fee, if you will. Like today, when you go to a movie theater, you have to pay the fee to get in to watch the movie, right? Or
Yeah,
you
there'll
go
be a wall around the town. So,
yeah, or like a house, right? You're renting
Yeah,
a house or you're
private
renting an
property.
apartment. You have to pay, right? to use that. So that might also be a part of that too, is that it was a fee to use that area and be part of that trade hub. You
Mhm.
had to pay a fee to the home tribe.
Yeah, like this town at the Mount, I've been to this mountain in Dayton, Ohio. This was a town that's on the bluff of the Miamisburg River, just
Mhm.
west of downtown. And it was, again, it was like a location, and they had the central mountain, and they believe there was burning on top that they was used as a light beacon to signal
Yeah.
that you're getting near our territory. And then that they would have a wall, and inside the wall would be the prime elite, I guess, the
Mhm.
governors, I guess, and outside that would be the farmers basically. So
Yeah.
same thing.
So like,
Let me show you.
when you look at when we look at, say, like the Badlands in South Dakota, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay, so I'll use an example because I can more speak freely about my own people's culture than some other nations, right? Just out of pure respect for that nation, right? Other nations. So we had things of that nature too, where we would set up a fire that would show the smoke coming up so that it would alert if people were if there was somebody coming.
Mhm.
And not just only that, but in other areas where we didn't have that, we had other ways and avenues of alerting when people were coming in. Just the same as every other tribe. So there is a lot of similarities, but there's also differences, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
What's this? What's this right here? This slide right here? Because I can see the same. I can see the arc in the background on one of the photos.
yes, this is the biggest mound that they found, of course, Cahokia. Now, could there have been bigger ones? Potentially, if they're covered in the wooded area. But this mound at Cahokia, it's right now it's only 100 feet. It probably would have been another 10 or 20 feet, but it's been so slumped and it's so flat, kind of flattened because so many people are walking and they're mowing it. So when the mowers go in there, it's kind of slowly pushing the soil down over time and compacting it. But yeah, if you look at this mound, originally there would have been a palisade wall below the mound and outside the town, and this would have been similar principle to like the Forbidden City of China. So only the elites would have huts on top of the first platform, and the chieftain and his family would be on the second platform on the very top, and there would be the main shelter or hut. So it was like a palace system where only certain elites could get in. So there was definitely central control and governance, and which means they probably had an army. In order to control the people, they had to have some kind of social contract with the people. If you do not bring in maize, a certain number of bushels, then we're gonna punish you because we need to sustain our population of 20,000 or more. They think it might have been 30,000, but more than likely, what led to the destruction, I bet, it probably would have been tornadoes. Probably not flooding because they're high enough from the Mississippi Valley, but I bet tornadoes really obliterated a lot of Native American sites, which inhibits their development. So just like in Egypt, they didn't have so many natural disasters that often, maybe at 1,600 BC. But in Americas, there are lots of natural disasters, especially tornadoes. So if you're building a settlement, a whole settlement can be wiped out, which stagnates the development of the civilization forming into an empire. That's why most Native Americans, I mean the Mesoamericans, most of the empires were near the equator in Central America because the environment was actually a little bit better, even though it was hotter on average. It was kind of better for the consolidation of power because the environment was dictating how fast a civilization can form.
So I wanna hang on a second. Let me get this here. I'm gonna send this to you on X, bro. Rebirth.
Okay.
I wanna show so we can see. There you go. It should be there on your X.
Yep. It just popped up. Hold on.
Okay.
Yep. There we go. Let me bring this up. Damn, what the hell? There we go.
Yeah, you're all are like we're like stuck in the big steam.
I see my slides, so I don't see what you're sharing.
There we go.
Hopefully-
I just got
There we
it.
go. So if you scroll down to where it starts talking about the seven, where it actually shows the listing of the 7 laws.
Yeah.
So
Prayer, respect, compassion, honesty, generosity, humility, wisdom.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's it.
yeah,
There is a theory that Cahokia has something like a ten Commandments kind of law or something that forbidden people from being barbaric. We don't know for sure because we don't have any writing there. That's the problem. It's probably been destroyed by tornadoes and weather. If there ever
so
was.
so the reason why I'm showing you this is so that you can see that every single tribe in what's nowadays called North America, back in the day it would have been called Northern Turtle Island, because that's the original name for the continent.
Yep. Turtle. Yep.
Yeah. So every single tribe had a similarity to these types of laws. Some of them had a few more, and others had basically 7 and up, depending on the different tribe and their value system and their way of life and society and culture. So this is what you're looking at. This is what we see. This is the guidelines of the law. It might be a little bit different per se to European law, but it is our law that governed our societies and our communities. So
Right.
does that help you, homie, there understand a little bit more?
This could
Help
just
me.
be a universal understanding of humanitarian, morals. It's something you see in China too, under principles of Confucianism. So it's not.
Yeah.
It's not-
So like
it's
so like
natural human
when you
instinct to try to be
yes
nice.
yes
because
and so
we don't want to die.
so
Warfare.
just because like
Yeah.
China came up with that, or in Asia they came up with it on their own accord. It
Yeah,
wasn't
Native Americans have
introduced
their own-
anywhere, and just like
all human.
the Picts, the Druids, and so forth, all came up with these things without any interaction with anyone else. It was
Yeah,
just
it would have
all a
developed
part
on its
of
own.
on its own, right? Even though it had similarities to other cultures around the world, right? But it came out of their own development.
Yeah, naturally, because they're human too, and they're gonna
Yeah.
instinctively know that in order to create social cohesion, you have to have some orderly respect for people in order to increase your population and have order. Or else it's just gonna be like the Vikings, where everyone's just slaughtering
Well,
each.
even the Vikings weren't exactly that way either.
They were pretty barbaric, and there's lots of evidence to say
I
they were
mean, the
not
Shield
friendly.
Maidens did a pretty good job on toning down, what we hear or what we see on, what's that fucking channel they use in the
Netflix?
no, the History Channel in the
Oh.
U.S.
You still want to call it that?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
call
know,
it
right?
that
Yeah,
either.
I don't call it that either.
I
Yeah,
don't call it that. I stopped calling it that the day that they sat there and they said that every civilization that had pyramids, it was because of ancient aliens. And that was the only way that these dumb savages that weren't white could possibly come up with this understanding and technology or the availability to make pyramids. And I'm like, oh,
You gotta remember, Atlantis. If Atlantis is truly Egypt, they were definitely not Europeans at the time.
Check
Of
that.
2000
I know,
BC.
like I'm